it gives me great pleasure to invite lovely Russa, who's going to come and share with us on the topic participation and action. Welcome, Lovey.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Lovey Russo, and I am an alcoholic. And it's only by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm alive, well, sober, and recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. And guys, I have to let you know that I had a little injury last week, and I'm in a sling. I tore my right rotator cuff. So I'm only one-handed, and that might make things a little less animated than I usually am, because usually I've got both hands going. But anyway, I have a grand sponsor who reminds me of Rule 62 all the time, not to take myself so damn seriously. So I pop this on at the beginning of every talk just to remind myself that, you know what? I am just another bozo on the bus, and let's have a good time. Guys, I have a sobriety date. It's September the 7th of 2015. And in that very, very short amount of time, there's been no need or obsession to pick up a drink or a drug. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor ad infinitum. And I'm a 3 legacy sponsor. So what that means is that if you work with me, we go through the steps from the big book. We go through the traditions from the 12 and 12. And we go through the concepts from the service manual and the world's and the concepts for world service. And I think it's really, really important to have these 36 principles, these 3 legacies in my life. And I'm of service in my home group, and I have a service sponsor. I also have a home group. It is the main purpose group out of Connecticut. But due to the power of amends, I get to live on the beautiful island of Bermuda. And as many of you know, Bermuda is a British protectorate. You know, it's an overseas territory, and you are all more than welcome. And if you find yourself on my beautiful island and you want to go to a meeting, please, please, please let me know. I am more than happy to take you to a meeting or make arrangements for you to go to a meeting. And conversely, if you find yourself in New England, right, you're out in like New York or Connecticut or Boston, and you find yourself in Connecticut and I'm here, that same invitation applies. So guys, listen, we are now all over the world, right? I mean, on this platform. And I'm so amazed, just brilliantly amazed that technology has allowed us to participate in our sobriety, right? Despite this pandemic, despite, you know, the distances that have been set forth. And now I have sponsees all over the globe. And the foreword to the 4th edition says, in any meeting anywhere, AA share experience, strength, and hope with each other. Modem to modem or face to face, AA speak the language of the heart in all of its power and simplicity. And I believe it was in November 1960 in the Grapevine, Bill Wilson wrote, nothing matters more to AA's future welfare than the manner in which we use the colossus of modern communication. Used unselfishly and used well, it can produce results surpassing our present imagination. And that's where I find myself today, right? I am now able to interact with people I would never, ever otherwise know. I get to hear the message in many different ways. This virtual platform has been, for me, what the printed book of Alcoholics Anonymous must have been like back in 1939, right? The foreword to the 2nd edition says a wholesale miracle has taken place. And the printed book allowed for a mass production of spiritual awakenings. To this day, I still have sponsees, and I know people since the pandemic have not yet returned to live face-to-face meetings, right? But with this book, with our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and with this technology, right, we all get to share in the miraculous solution to alcoholism. I have made incredible friends virtually, and hopefully someday I get to meet them. But if not, we still get to carry this message. Guys, thank you so much for asking me to speak, and for this group for hosting it. It's always an honor to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous, including speaking. This is not my favorite part of service work, guys. And when I was new, I said to my sponsor, right, quite arrogantly, I will do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous except speak publicly. You know what? I just love it. You know, I love it when I make these declarations, right? Because my higher power just kind of laughed at me and goes, oh, isn't that sweet? Guess what? You're speaking 3 times this weekend, right? That's what happens in my arrogance. Guys, what you're going to hear is 100% my experience, my truth, my reality, both in the program and while I was in active alcoholism. You see, I can only share with you my experience, right? I'm a fellow traveler, and I do not profess to know anything about AA, the big book, God, right? And as a result of the third step, I am out of management, and everything is above my pay grade. My third step reminds me that I am simply an agent of God, and my only job is to take care of God's kids. Now, I'm extremely grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. Grateful is what I am, and gratitude is what I do. For me, this is a simple program of spiritual action, right? For me, AA stands for action and accountability. I don't get struck sober simply sitting in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I've got work to do. I have a friend, Laura, in Texas, and she says, I am rendered sober as a result of taking specific actions. Now, Gordon asked me to speak a little bit about participation and action. And again, I can only share with you the actions that I've taken, right? How participation in my sobriety, how participation in Alcoholics Anonymous changed my life. And I think it's disingenuous to get up and lecture about anything, especially about Alcoholics Anonymous, and not have any experience to back it up, right? I learned how to be a member of good standing in Alcoholics Anonymous by listening and watching all of you, right? What did, the happy, joyous, and sober people do in AA, right? I wanted what they had, and I had to do what they did. And here's a little hint. They participated in their recovery by taking action. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. AA stands for me, action and accountability. So I'm going to try to weave the theme of action and participation throughout my story, because I didn't do this alone, right? I did this by watching you guys, by participating in the things that you did. So when I first walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was facing 16 years in federal prison. And I would hear you guys say ridiculous, unimaginable things like, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a grateful alcoholic. Oh my God, what the hell is wrong with all of you guys? Like, what on earth were you grateful for? I mean, I wanted to drink and I couldn't, and I wasn't very happy, and I certainly wasn't very grateful. You see, I came to AA not to stop drinking, but for you people to teach me how to drink safely, right? How to drink like a lady, or how to drink those ridiculous drinks you get in Mallorca, right? With chunks of fruit and umbrellas. See, I didn't drink like that. Right? I was a whiskey drinker, and I figured you guys were the professionals and you could teach me how to drink. See, I figured you guys knew what you were doing. Instead, right? Instead, you took the action and showed me these things called the steps, and told me that drinking was not my problem, but my solution. See, that was news to me. I had always been under the impression that drinking was my problem. At least that's what everybody in my life had said to me, right? Frothy emotional appeals. My husband was spittle flying from his mouth. Stop drinking. Why do you drink so much? And the only answer I could ever give him was, I don't know. I have no idea why I drink so much. Now, guys, I absolutely loved alcohol, loved everything about it. And if I had known my last drink was going to be my last drink, I would have had a parade. I would have hosted a party. I would have invited the media. It would have been a huge celebration. But you know what? That was not the case. And I thoroughly, absolutely enjoyed a 21-year-old single malt scotch, right? The smokier, the better. And I love the way that it smelled. And I love the way that scotch, looked, in a crystal glass as, the sun shone through it. And I loved its effect on me, right? You see, whiskey was my best friend. It was my lover. It was my confidant. It was there when I celebrated. It was there when I cried. And I love the way that alcohol made me feel. It transported me to this place of comfort and ease. You see, alcohol did for me what I could never, ever do for myself. And the book says that we drink primarily for the effect. You see, booze was magical, right? It made me taller. It made me younger. It made me, thinner. It always made me a better dancer. And more importantly, it provided courage and self-confidence. Alcohol transformed me into the person I could never be on my own. And Carl Jung wrote to Bill Wilson, and in his letter wrote spiritus contra spiritum, right? God the spirit, capital S, versus alcohol the spirit, small s. And there's a reason why alcohol is called a spirit. I've learned that alcohol is derived from an Arabic term, al-gal, meaning body-eating spirit. I don't know about any of you guys, but when I was drinking, alcohol owned me physically, emotionally, and spiritually, right? It had depleted me of who I was on my own. And there was no way I could take any action. I was powerless over this alcohol of the spirit. And I didn't know why. Now, I hear this all the time, right? I always felt different than all of you, right? And I always felt like an outsider. And my parents were German immigrants, and my name really is Lovey. I was joking before the meeting started that, my parents thought that Lovey was an English language name, not a British term of endearment. So let's just say, I had an interesting upbringing. Now, I have 2 younger sisters, and we look exactly the same. We look exactly the same. But when we were kids, I would squish our faces up to the mirror, absolutely convinced that somehow, I was mixed up at birth. And I would scrutinize these details. And I grew up in the 70s, and it was the time of body snatchers or alien invasion or robot replacement. And I really, truly believe that all the people in my life had been replaced, right? They've been replaced by something else. I was the only human being around. And I had all of these thoughts before I'm 5 years old. 5 years old, and I'm already, I could use a drink already in kindergarten, right? And I could never understand. I could never figure out what was wrong with me until I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And here again, you guys took the action, right? Because you were participating in your recovery. You were sitting in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Sharing what recovery looked like. And you guys told me, right, that what my problem was is that I had a spiritual malady. And that spiritual malady made me feel irritable, restless, and discontent. And there was a solution. Right? There was a solution to this, but I had to take the action, right? I had to get thoroughly honest and engage in a program of recovery known as the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, a spiritual malady does not make me alcoholic. I am married to this absolutely amazing man, right? And he has a spiritual malady of his own, but he's not an alcoholic, right? He can take a sip of beer and put it down and walk away from it, right? And I'm sitting there going like, dude, you're letting your beer go warm. You're letting your beer go flat, right? Not a problem to him. What makes me alcoholic is that I have a physical allergy to alcohol and this really, really strange mental obsession. You see, I used to believe it was the 8th or the 9th drink that got me drunk. And if I could stop drinking, let's say at 5 drinks, okay, no more than 6, right? Maybe 7, right? I would be okay. But, 6 drinks would come and go. And the big book uses this really great phrase, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, right? How does this happen again? Why am I here, right? And it was you guys, right? You guys that told me that what the first drink gets me drunk. And you told me that when I drink, I trigger this allergy and this phenomenon of craving. And the first drink insists on the second, which demands the third and screams for the fourth, and so on and so on and so on. You see, I just thought I was changing my mind somewhere along the line. But it was you guys, by participating in your recovery, sharing, right? Sharing what alcoholism is and what it isn't, taught me, right, that I had lost the power of choice. I wasn't changing my mind. I didn't have a choice. Now, I have a body that won't let me drink and a mind that won't let me stop, right? And there's the obsession, the peculiar mental twist, right? That my mind tells me that the next time I drink, it's going to be different. Swear to God, Lovey, it's going to be different next time, right? That if I can stop drinking for a small period of time, I should be able to drink, right? That my daughter got married in October, and her new mother-in-law says to me, the kids were having a champagne toast, and her new mother-in-law says to me, "Really, Lovey, come on, you're not going to have a champagne toast? You're not going to participate in the champagne toast?" No. She goes, "Come on, really, what would happen if you had a little sip of champagne?" Let me tell you what would happen if I had a sip of champagne. First of all, guys, I do not understand the verb to sip, right? I chug, I double fist, right? It's not a verb I understand, right? So I would probably have 5 or 6 glasses of champagne, and then I would hit the bottles of champagne. But you know what? Wine is fine, but liquor is quicker. So now I'm in some amber colored fluid, probably tequila or whiskey. tequila makes my clothes fall off, right? I would probably end up, having a food fight with the wedding cake. Oh, those groomsmen were really, really handsome. I'd start making out with the groomsmen. And then I would have an epic fight with my mother-in-law, and I would end up in the hospital in handcuffs, right? Because that's what happens to me when I drink. That's what happens to me when I drink. But you guys made it really clear to me that I have to have no lurking notion whatsoever that I could ever drink safely, right? No lurking notion whatsoever. Now, guys, I have 6 kids. They're all mine, gave birth to them all I gave birth to them all naturally, no medication. And to this day, I cannot tell you how uncomfortable birth was. I have no relative memory of the pain. Why? Because I firmly believe God gives women amnesia to trick us into having more babies. So if you've had a baby, or if you've been with a woman who's had a baby, why would we do that a second time? I'll tell you why, right? Because you forget. You have this built-in forgetter, right? This peculiar mental twist where you go, oh, it wasn't so bad last time, until you're in the middle of it the next time and you go, oh yeah, that wasn't so great. And page 24 of our book, right? In italics, you guys showed me, made me highlight it, made me underline it, made me memorize it, right? We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory and suffering of humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against that first drink, right? I'm without defense against that first drink. So I'm powerless over alcohol. If I'm powerless over alcohol, I need a power greater than myself, right? And you guys showed me how to do that. So my mother is still alive. She's in her 80s, and she's still incredibly proud of the fact that all of her babies slept from the moment we got home from the hospital. And I know you know how she did that. She put whiskey in our baby bottles. I'm not the only one. It probably happened to a whole bunch of you, right? It was post-war stuff. That's what they did. And she put it on our gums when we were teething, and she would give us hot toddies, when we came into play from the snow. And she used it as a general disinfectant on our hands, right? We would go outside and play, she'd wash our hands in whiskey. And I remember getting whiskey underneath my fingernails, and I would suck that out, right? There is a fast food brand called KFC or Kentucky Fried Chicken, and their logo is finger licking good. Guys, I don't need fried chicken underneath my fingernails. I need whiskey, right? That's what made my life better. Now, she also made this concoction made with grilled onions, vinegar, and whiskey, and she would feed that to us when we weren't feeling well. And I faked being sick a lot, right? And I had to deal with my sisters. For a quarter each, I would take their dose of homemade whiskey medication. And for me, it was a win-win. Win-win. Why? Because I got their doses of whiskey and I made some money. Now, there is a story in our book about Jim, right? And more about alcoholism. And Jim is a salesman, and he's out selling some cars, and he gets hungry. He goes into a restaurant and he orders a sandwich and a milk. And then he says something like, suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it wouldn't hurt on a full stomach. And when we read this in meetings, people have a visceral reaction to it, right? Oh my God, that's disgusting. Who puts whiskey in milk? And I'm thinking, me. Oh my God, pick me, right? Because I got whiskey first in my baby bottle, right? And then it was in a glass with soda and ice. And then it was just with, whiskey and ice, until I was drinking whiskey straight from a bottle as it sat underneath the car in the summer. Right? And again, it was you guys that reminded me I had lost the power of choice, and I will continue to drink until something stops me. I hear a lot of you guys talk about the progression of alcoholism and how consequences eventually started catching up with you, right? My experience is a little different. I had consequences from the very beginning. The very first drink I had on my own, I got blackout drunk and got pregnant, and I was 14 years old. And that baby was placed for adoption at birth. And without tools, right, I turned to the only thing that provided any source of comfort, and that was alcohol. You see, alcohol is reliable, and I know exactly how much to drink to get me where I need to be. But booze turned on me in a really huge way, and I started to put myself into dangerous situations just to be able to drink the way that I wanted. And as my drinking progressed, I began to cross lines I never, ever thought I would. And the book talks about having moral and philosophical convictions galore. I had these convictions, guys. I was raised well, right? My sisters have never been in state-sponsored jewelry, right? Handcuffs. But I have, right? And my standards of behavior began to drop just to drink the way I wanted to. And I started to justify my behavior. And my grand sponsor tells me if I have to justify, defend, or rationalize my behavior, it's wrong. So here's the deal. I was a heavy haul helicopter pilot, and I flew drunk. And I was willing to risk the lives of babies sleeping in their cribs so that none of you would know that I had a drinking problem. And I did the most insane thing of my life, right? I engaged those rotors and then I took off. And when I landed safely and as I sat there during the 2-minute cool down period, I was baffled by what I had just done, right? In 30 years of professional aviation, I had never yet crossed that line. And I crawled out of my aircraft and I fell to the tarmac. And the book talks about that jumping off place, right? Where we would realize that we couldn't live with alcohol, we couldn't live without it, and we would know loneliness like never before, and we would wish for the end. And guys, I was done, absolutely done. Now, in the state of Connecticut, where I was flying, there are license plates that start with 2 letters, a dash, and then something else. And when I wiped away the tears, look, the authorities are coming, people know, and the car parked in front of me had a license plate, AA dash something else. And that was the first time I recognized a sign from God, and I crawled into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, my higher power, which I did not have a relationship with before Alcoholics Anonymous, has a wicked sense of humor and uses what I call God shots to make a point. You see, alcoholism was the baseball bat that God used to get my attention. And I walked into the rooms of AA hoping you guys would teach me how to drink like a lady. But instead, I found God first as the gift of desperation. You see, I'm out in this metaphorical sea and it's dark and it's stormy and I'm drowning, right? The desperation of drowning men. And you guys show up, right? You're participating in your sobriety. You're taking the action. You're taking your 12-step action and looking for newcomers. And I'm out at sea and you guys show up and you throw me a life preserver and you drag me into safety. Right? I had no choice. I was nowhere else to go. I was drowning. I was out of options. Now, if it was in Bermuda and it was a beautiful sunny day and I was just a little bit off of shore and I could touch the bottom, or if I could swim back and you guys showed up and said, here's a life preserver, right? I might say, yeah, maybe not. I don't really like that one. It's got barnacles on it and it's a little moldy. Ooh, why don't you throw me that pretty pink magenta one, right? Out of options. So I come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my next higher power is a group of drunks. A group of drunks, right? God is a group of drunks. And I'm watching you guys say absolutely ridiculous things. Oh, I am a grateful alcoholic. And I'm watching you get your families back together, and I'm watching you, work the steps, and I'm watching you reassemble your lives. Right? I've never seen that before. Never seen that before. And then my next higher power is good, orderly direction. Because now I start to follow your advice. You say, hey, Lovey, get a sponsor, someone who has experience in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and start doing the work. Oh, okay. Right. Hey, Lovey, look, you know what? You need to get a home group, right? Be active and participate in your home group. Show up, make coffee, sweep floors, clean toilets, do whatever they ask you to do. Oh, okay. Now, as a result of doing that work, as a result of participating in my sobriety, as a result of taking the action, right, I have a spiritual awakening, and I get to develop this intimate and vertical relationship with a God of my understanding. Now, guys, I will tell you, one of my most glaring character defects is self-importance. And I have to constantly, and my sponsor constantly reminds me also that the universe as we understand it is like 13 billion years old? I'm almost 60, right? What do I know in comparison to 13 billion years? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, right? I'm one of 7 billion people on this planet. And if something should ever happen to me, maybe 100 people would be affected by my death, right? This program allows me to keep my life in perspective, right? And my higher power reminds me to stay right-sized, alert, and vigilant. And I do that through the action of engaging in this program of recovery outlined in the first 164 pages of our book, Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, and when I do that, I keep my life and my ego right-sized and in check because I'm out of management, right? We have an entire chapter called Into Action, Steps 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11, right? There's the action of taking those steps. Now, I also know that all of my troubles are of my own making, even if they aren't inherently orchestrated by my hand, right? See, it's all about my perception, my reaction, and my attitude. You see, I have tools today, and I have to be entirely willing to allow God to remove those defects, right? There's action, right? Some are really spicy, and I'm not willing to let them go. And that's when I get into trouble. You see, because when I'm not willing, those same character defects keep bubbling up. And step 7, right? And step 7 is just, one paragraph in the big book. But for me, it's absolutely vital, right? Because I get to do God's bidding, right? Step 7 provides the grace of humbly asking God to remove those defects. Sometimes for life, not really my experience. Sometimes for a day, again, not really my experience. Sometimes they're gone for an hour. Usually it's only 30 seconds, right? See, it's what I do when I'm in the grocery store, standing behind a little old lady paying in coupons and pennies. And there was someplace I needed to be like a half an hour ago, right? What do I do? What are the actions that I take? Well, I need to recognize that I'm being impatient, right? And I need to ask God to remove that impatience. And then I resolutely turn my attention to someone that I can help. And I'll say to that little old lady, excuse me, ma'am, can I help you out to the car? Can I help you bag your groceries? You see, I have no business being impatient. See, because I know it's Little Old Lady Tuesday, and that's the only day she can get to the store, right? And then I know she's on a fixed income, and I know she's trying to maximize her budget. I'm the problem, not her, right? I didn't get to the store on time. I didn't organize my day properly. It's my fault. It's always my fault. You guys taught me that, right? My sponsor would say to me, read pages 60 to 63, pay attention to 62, right? The root of all my troubles. Now, before I found my way into AA, guys, I used to sit in justifiable anger, right? I stewed in it, I nurtured it, I cherished it, right? And I used to go to the gym in my younger days when I was, more active, physically active and more fit, and I would kickbox. And there was nothing better than diffusing aggression by, just hitting that bag. And, as a result of these steps, as a result of taking the actions, right? I have no inclination whatsoever to hit that bag. Guys, it all seems like a lot of work, right? A lot of work. That internal churning, the anger, the need to physically dominate my world is gone. It's gone because I took the actions. There's an internal peace about me, a serenity that I hope permeates every part of me. Every morning, I surrender my opinion, my judgment, and what I think I know about God. You see, I wake up every day with a clean slate and ready to accept the best of this world and all of her people, right? So I have this box, right? This is says Pillsbury dark chocolate brownie mix, and if we were all to have it, we should ideally all end up with exactly the same cake, right? We were all to make it and follow the directions. We should all have the same cake. But here's the thing. I might be on a diet, right? And I might substitute the oil for applesauce. I might decide that, it needs to be a little more chocolatey. So I'll throw in a box of chocolate chips. I might add some, shredded coconut or whatever my fancy strikes. However, whatever I do or don't do, I'm going to get a version of the cake. But unless I follow these directions, unless I take the action, right, I'm not going to get the intended outcome, right? If I want what's on the front of this box, I have to follow the directions. I have to follow the actions exactly. Despite not wanting to or not believing it'll be fluffy and moist and not understanding how, that little bag inside with the powder will be converted to cake. You see, I just have to trust that the actions I take are going to give me cake. So I mentioned that I'm a pilot. And, guys, I used to wrongfully believe that I was in command of my aircraft. And while theoretically that's true, I have the controls. Here's the reality. Air traffic control is in charge. They're always in charge, right? They tell me what to do because they have a much larger scope of the skies, right? I can maybe see only 10 nautical miles ahead, right? I don't have to like it when I'm vectored around a storm that I can't see. I don't have to understand why ATC is asking me to increase my altitude. I don't have to believe that they're right. But if I'm to have a safe and happy outcome, I gotta follow their directions. I have to take the action, period, right? No one dies with their boots on, right? I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I know everything. I get to participate in my sobriety because you guys know so much more than I do, right? That there is something out there that knows more. So how many of us understand aviation mechanics? Anyone? Anybody understand the coefficient of lift or aerodynamics? How many of us can actually fix an aircraft? How many of us can actually fly an aircraft, right? But has that stopped any of you from getting on a plane, right? Has that stopped any of you from getting on a plane at Heathrow and going to Mallorca or going to Paris? No, right? We get on that aircraft. You see, you don't have to understand how an airplane works, right? You just have to trust that it does. And that aircraft is going to get you from point A to point B. See, I don't have to understand how God works to have an effective contact with him, right? I just have to follow the directions, friends, right? I have to follow the directions exactly as indicated. And when I take those actions, I am rendered sober, sane, and usefully whole. We all have one of these, right? But this just doesn't connect by itself, right? There are actions I have to take, right? I got to put in my passcode, and then I have to go to settings, and then I have to go to general, and then I go to cellular. Click, I click the button, right? And now I'm magically, mysteriously connected with this thing I can't see. But there are things I need to do, right? I need to make sure this is fully charged. I need to make sure that I'm operating on the right system. But when I take the actions, I am always connected. Now, sometimes when I first log on, there are like 100 messages waiting for me. Sometimes there aren't any messages at all, but that does not mean that I am not connected. And I learned that from you guys, right? I learned that from you. Okay, so our 12th step, step 12. Love step 12, says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, right? Steps 1 through 11, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these these principles in all of my affairs. And for me, and only for me, step 12 is a 3-part step. The first part is a promise. It's a promise. If I do the first 11 steps, I am guaranteed a spiritual awakening. The first 11 steps are the directions for finding a God of my understanding. Now, there are conditions. The book is filled with conditions. I have to be thoroughly honest. I'm an alcoholic. I can lie about anything, right? No half measures. Guys, come on. I can half-ass anything. And it tells me I have to be fearless. The book says I'm driven by 100 forms of fear. But if I'm willing to do the work, if I'm willing to participate in the actions that are required, I am guaranteed a spiritual awakening. Guaranteed, right? Now, the second part of step 12 is to carry this message to alcoholics. This message, right? What is this message? Well, for me, and only for me, this message is found on the foreword to the first edition of the Big Book. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. You see, guys, because of all of you, by following what you've done, by the examples that you have set forth, right? I get to sponsor a lot of people. I chat with alcoholics daily. I need to be an Al-Anon because of all the alcoholics in my life, right? I take people through the steps. I speak at meetings. I facilitate Big Book studies. I served as a GSR. I participate in the traditions and the concepts, and I make sure all my sponsees are acquainted with all 36 principles of our program. But more importantly, I have a responsibility, right? A responsibility to look for the new person, right? To share with them my experience. Now, the big book uses the word approach 28 times. I have a responsibility as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous to go out and find the newcomer, right? I take the action and I go to wind-up joints, the places I wind up when I drink, jails, rehabs, detoxes. And I go to fishing spots and beginner meetings and I look for those people, right? Because I'm taking the actions that are set forth in our book, right? What does the book say? Here, hold on, sorry. On page 89, practical experience shows that nothing will ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives, right? I get to do that. And I'm so grateful for that. You see, when I'm in a meeting, my home group meeting, and there's a face I don't recognize, I'll go up and say, hi, are you new? Yes. Welcome. My name is Lovey, right? Here's the coffee. Here are the donuts. Here are the bathrooms. Here's a meeting schedule. Here's a book. Please come and sit beside me. Can I introduce you to some people? Would you like to go for coffee after the meeting and talk? Another new face, especially in Bermuda. Hi, are you new? No, I'm just visiting. Welcome. My name is Lovey. Here's the coffee or the tea. Here are the scones, because we don't donut in Bermuda. Here are the bathrooms. Here's a meeting schedule. Let me circle the meetings closest to your hotel. How can I be of service to you while you're visiting our beautiful island? Do you need a ride? See, I get to do those things. Another new face. Hi, are you new? No. I got 30 years of resentment and a coffee pot, and I'm here to create chaos. Welcome. My name is Lovey. Here's the coffee. Here are the donuts. Here are the bathrooms. Here's a meeting schedule. Look at all these brand new, beautiful big book meetings, right? Here's a 4th edition book, just in case you're still working from the 3rd. Please come and sit beside me. Let me introduce you to some people. Do you want to go for coffee after the meeting and talk? You see, guys, I get to do that today. Now, the 3rd part of step 12, again, just for me, is to practice these principles in all of my affairs. All of them. Sometimes it's easier than others, but all of my affairs, right? Because spiritual principles will solve all my problems. It's how I behave. See, I can behave really well for an hour at Alcoholics Anonymous. How do I behave when I'm in the grocery store? How do I behave when I'm tromping through, Heathrow and it's busy and they've just put all these new charges down, right? You see, and this is the challenge in my life. You see, I try to live my life with compassion and love and forgiveness, goodwill, humility, honesty, fidelity, consideration. I know the book says love and tolerance, but tolerance is a verb I have a hard time getting under. You see, for me, tolerance comes from a place of spiritual hubris, right? That I am just putting up with you. I'm putting up with your nonsense. You see, that's not where my program takes me. I need to love God's kids where they happen to be on their journey. I get to put myself into their shoes, right? I get to love God's kids. You see, as a result of this 3rd part of step 12, I get to be a producer of harmony rather than confusion, right? I don't live in conflict anymore because you know what, guys? Life is really precious and way, way too short. Now, I mentioned the word restitution. And restitution is a huge spiritual principle in my life and follows the 9th step amends. I had to make amends to the government agency in the United States that oversees aviation. And I put it off for a really, really, really long time. And my sponsor, being a really great sponsor, would say, hey, have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? Have you done it yet? No. So one day I got this great idea. I'm smarter than my sponsor. I'm going to assert my sponsor's authority. So I call my attorney and barrister solicitor. And I said, hey there, Mr. Attorney, this is what my sponsor wants me to do. And my attorney says, oh, hell no. We worked so hard to keep you out of jail and you want to go do what? No. Guys, I'm vindicated, right? And I go smugly superior. I go back to my sponsor, I go, hey there, sponsor. This is what my attorney says. And my sponsor, in true sponsor fashion, kind of pats me on my head and says, oh, isn't that sweet? How free do you want to be? Get on your knees and pray for the willingness to be willing. Sponsors have just this wisdom about them. And so I did, right? And the big book tells me that if a desired action is to be taken, we must not shirk. So I made an appointment with this particular agency, and I went down and I took my attorney because I knew I was going to need him. And I took my aviation physician, my union rep, and another sober pilot. And as I stood before this panel, I told them that I was a sober woman in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that my sobriety was predicated on making right the wrongs of my past. I wasn't there to beg for my job back or to have my license reinstated. Guys, I was only there with the intention of doing the next right thing. And I would accept any judgment that they had made for me for my future. You see, I could have been arrested and remanded to custody on the spot, and I was prepared to go to jail. I had written letters to my children for the events of their, their wedding or the birth of their first children. I said goodbye to my husband, who was all very teary-eyed. But a man on that panel said, I too am a sober man in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know exactly what you're trying to do. He said, this is what we want you to do. Never drink again, one day at a time. And he said, we want you to help share what alcoholism is and what it isn't in the aviation community. And we want you to help other aviation professionals find recovery. See, guys, I get to do that today as a result of taking the action, as a result of being a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous, as a result of participating in your life, right? Taking you through the steps. I fully embraced, that I was wrong and I had to make amends for that. I get to make sure that other people will never lose their careers. You see, I will never fly again. I am done. My wings are cut. I am grounded, but I'm okay with that because I don't have to. I can be, I can share the news, right? That there is hope. We're running out of time. I know, I'm sorry, but I'm going to leave you with this. In my experience, there's a grand plan. I'm just not privy to it. And oh my God, does that tick me off sometimes? But everything happens for a reason, and more will always be revealed. I told you about that baby I had when I was 14. And he found me several years back. And he's a combat surgeon, and he holds the rank of lieutenant colonel. And he works with civilian refugee populations only. He was in the Turkey-Syria area, in the last couple of weeks with the earthquake. And he has helped countless people, saved thousands of lives, and has restored humanity one person at a time. You see, guys, it took me 35 years of pour me another drink, right, to understand the divine purpose of his birth. You see, I was a vessel. I provided genetics and a womb. His adoptive parents nurtured and cared for him, and the military trained him and put him where he would be of maximum service, right? There's a line in our book, my most favorite line, page 77. And it says something to the effect that our real purpose, right? Our real purpose as individuals is to fit ourselves, right? To fit ourselves is an action. We have to contort, or we have to, twist our bodies. It's not comfortable. It's not convenient. But we fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Guys, I am so honored and so privileged to be a part of God's grand plan. If you are new or nearly new, please, please, please get a sponsor. Someone who has experience in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Take the action, do the work, participate in your sobriety, and just do it quickly, right? Because you are worth it. And if you're a veteran of this program, I beg you, I beseech you, I implore you, reach out your hand to a newcomer and show them that this program works. And if you bear with me for one more second, hard to do things with one hand, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna close with page 164 in our book. It says, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to us and to you. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Guys, thank you so much for allowing me to participate in my sobriety today. Thank you for allowing me to take the action and sharing my recovery with you. Mwah. Thanks.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Everyone can unmute if they want to share appreciation.
Thank you.